Harvesting the silent vine. It was the night of the annual family gathering when I first felt the shadows creeping in. The air was thick with the mingling odors of burnt meat and cheap wine. But it wasn't the food that made my stomach churn. It was the laughter mocking and biting, picking at the thin skin of my resolve. I sat quietly, a ghost among those who had once called me family, my heart rattling in my chest like an uninvited guest. "Look who's back from the loony bin," my cousin Kelly shouted, her eyes wide with faux concern. The table erupted in laughter, and as I forced a smile, I could feel the years of scorn weighing down on me, wrapping around my throat like a choking vine. It had been years since I'd left this place, the old house with peeling paint, sun-bleached curtains, and memories stitched into every corner. I had become an expert in emotive parasitic botany, a field my family deemed unhealthy, ridiculous, or worse. They didn't understand. They couldn't. To them, I was a disgrace, a failure who chased shadows of the mind instead of solid careers and stability. But to me, those shadows were alive. They had a hunger, a terrible, aching need that demanded to be understood. That night, I tried to ignore their jeers and focus on the pouch hanging from my belt, a pouch filled with seeds I had harvested from the silent vine, a plant that feasted not just on the soil, but on the very emotions of those who dared to come near. No one believed it was real. They thought it was just folklore, a tale spun to scare children. But I had learned the truth, a truth steeped in madness and despair. As the evening wore on, the laughter faded and the wine flowed. My family's external bravado masked their unease. You see, I had returned home not just as a disgraced scientist, but as a herald of warning. I had been to the abandoned villages where the vines spread unchecked, where they consumed the very essence of entire communities. Those who doubted me hadn't seen what I had witnessed. The twisted bodies twisted in joy. Their minds spiraled into a madness so deep it would terrify the bravest of souls. "Do you have any more of those crazy plants?" my Uncle Bill asked, trying to stifle a smile. "I could use a little insanity in my life." His chuckle echoed through the room. But the sound twisted in my stomach. "Would you like to see how they thrive?" I replied, my voice low, almost a whisper. The laughter died suddenly, as if a thick fog had rolled in. Every eye turned toward me, the weight of their disbelief palpable. I couldn't hold back anymore. I pulled the pouch from my belt and opened it, revealing the glistening black seeds that seemed to pulse with life even in the dim light. "You think it's a joke?" I could see their hesitation, the subtle shift in their expressions. They didn't want to believe, didn't want to confront what lay behind the curtain of their ridicule. But I needed them to see. "What's the matter? Afraid of a little botany?" Kelly retorted, but her voice trembled ever so slightly. Ignoring her, I threw the seeds across the table, a scattering of black against the white tablecloth. "These will show you," I said, my heart racing with a dreadful thrill. "They'll reveal what you've denied." I watched as the seeds began to shimmer and twist, a reaction that filled the air with a heavy, intoxicating scent, one too sweet and too cloying. My family gasped, eyes wide. The laughter washed away like dust in the wind. The room darkened as vines erupted from the seeds, snaking across the table, their movement lithe and purposeful. "Stop!" my mother shrieked, the color draining from her face. "What have you done, you lunatic?" The vines reached for them, tendrils curling around their wrists, squeezing like the fingers of a long-dead lover. They were drawn to emotion, thrumming with the very dread they had instilled in me for years. The room filled with sobs, my mother's cries of horror and disbelief, my father's silent panic. "Mom? Dad?" I shouted, realizing what I had unleashed. But it was too late. The vines slithered and writhed, absorbing their fear, their regret, the pain of not believing me. With each drop of emotion, the vines grew thicker, darker, until they transformed into a shadowy tapestry enveloping my family. Their faces twisted in terror, and I felt a wave of guilt wash over me, mixing with the vindication of knowing I was right. In that moment, I was no longer their disgrace, but a messenger of fate. They struggled, pleading, but the silent vines had their own hunger, an insatiable need to consume all that had once been dismissed. I could hear their thoughts, their regrets swirling around in the air, seeping into the roots of the plants. As the last of their screams faded into the night, I steadied myself. The vines retracted, leaving behind the remnants of a family that had ridiculed what they could not understand. They were gone, consumed by the very disbelief they had once laughed off. I stepped back, breathing heavily, the taste of victory bitter on my tongue. I walked away from the remnants of my former life, knowing that I had survived what May could not face. The knowledge I carried was heavy, a burden I would bear alone. I was a warning now, a truth whispered in the dark corners of the world. The vines would grow again, feeding on the disbelief, the mockery, and I could only hope that others could learn from the price my family paid for their scorn. As I stepped back into the shadows, I could almost hear their voices echoing in my mind, each word a reminder of the cost of ignorance. They had mocked the silent vine, but the real horror was in the silence that followed. Now it was my turn to be the bearer of truth, a truth that would leave its mark on the world, lingering like a haunting melody in the night.